Welcome to Coastal Voices, the show that brings you stories about life on Hatteras Island. This is Susan West, your host for the evening. The stories you'll hear tonight capture the spirit of people from Rodanthe to Hatteras Village. The storytellers come from all walks of life, and topics include everything from childhood memories to fish tales, community traditions to big storms, hard work to daring adventures. The stories are from recordings collected by local volunteers in the Coastal Voices Oral History Project. You'll meet some of those volunteers in the show tonight. To learn more about the project, please visit our website at carolinacoastalvoices.com. Anderson Midget talks about running the Manio to Hatteras bus line with his brothers. He was 17 years old when the bus service began in 1938. Amy Glass interviewed Mr. Midget in 1988 for the Southern Oral History Program. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
My dad had helped us get a bus line started. It was my daddy's idea. You know, we being kids, I think he wanted to try to keep us busy because we stayed busy from little boys. Besides, he needed a way to get home from Ocracoke that he was stationed. That's what I always used to kid him about. One of the reasons he thought up on the bus line. Anyway, that bus line we started in July 28th, 1938, and we operated it for 35 years. My dad died September 12th, 1938, so he was only with us for a short time. So we sort of were just a bunch of kids trying to do something. But we did run the bus, and we carried many passengers on it. And we used to bring just about anybody that left from Ocracoke to go to Norfolk. They all traveled with us. Ocracoke, Hatteras, and Buxton, Avon, Rodanthe, Waves, and Salvo, all of them. So most of the people that went off island went with us, rode with us. So we got to know just about everybody, you know, in the whole area. Of course, there was no roads at that time. So we went, you drove anywhere you could. We used to call it the 101 roads, because there was no really designated road that you went every day. If the tide was out, you drove the surf. If the tide was in, you drove probably the bank of the beach, or what we would call inside roads, which was a dozen up and down the beaches that you'd pick out which you thought was better. And when one got too bad, you'd start making another one. So, but it was a daily service, and it was there again, a lot of fun. Something that was hard work, but we didn't know it. We didn't realize it. Something that I couldn't do today, but I thoroughly enjoyed. We had a lot of experiences on the bus line, like we've lost buses. I mean, when I say lost them to tide. During the trip. We have had inlets were cut in one storm while we were running the buses in 44, and they had about 4 inlets that was cut on the island, and we crossed those inlets. A lot of times, yeah, in a bus, and a lot of times we drove way out in the Sound, like a mile in the Sound, to get around the deep water in a bus. So we knew buses, and we knew the island. So we still continued a bus line, even after that. We broke a lot of springs. You know, it was a daily thing. It wasn't unusual to break a spring a day on those buses, work on them half the night, get them ready for the next day. We started our little garage and kept them painted and kept them washed down. And in other words, we did our own work on the buses. There was 3 of us boys. There was Harold, my older brother, who died about 7 years back, and Stockton, my younger brother. There was 3 of us in it together. We worked it pretty hard and steady. from that bus line, I suppose we've always worked together. You know, our dad taught us to work together. So we came back and really have been working together ever since. I could tell you, could go on and on about the bus line, but there was a lot of beautiful experiences there, a lot of hard times. We kept the banks very busy, getting money from them for buses that we would leave on the side of the road, but we always paid for those, you know, so we always had good credit, so we could always buy another bus. We must have used in our operation, or I would say of the 35 years, it's over 100 buses. We started out with little station wagons. You know, that's what our buses were really Ford station wagon. Yeah, new, 38. That's what we really started with. And we used a lot of them. Sometimes we'd run 3 of the small ones together. You know, we'd have as many as 3 on the road at the same time. And then we finally got into the buses like school buses, only built higher, you know, so that you have headroom in it. And we run those for years. We hardly ever had too much to trade when we got through with them down here. You know, because it was rough on vehicles, very rough.
Driving through the South,
Yeah.
I imagine it would be.
Yeah. So most of the time we might sell them to somebody. Most of the time we used them right down to where there wasn't much left of them. I remember we used to get $2.50 from Hatteras to Manio. That would have probably been about in the probably 40, 41. But the fare never did go up over 2.75. You know, it's probably started out originally maybe about 2.25. I think it went to 2.75, like from Hatteras to Manio, one way, yes. And we would usually go loaded and come back loaded. And it took really we barely survived on the bus line because it would take what you could make out of it to keep the buses going.
Sure.
You know, that was our work. We'd meet the boat coming from Ocracoke every morning around 8:15. It would take us. We would take 4 hours and a half from here to Oregon Inlet. That's what it would. That was scheduled, and that was a tight schedule. We'd cross the ferry with Captain Toby, go into Manio, make connections with the Virginia Dairy Transportation Company boss. Probably have about anywhere from an hour, half an hour to an hour in Manio, and turn right around and come back to Hatteras. And that was a daily schedule, 7 days a week. And we didn't miss many days. We had a little bus station here at Hatteras, which now we have as the old convenient store right next door. And in the other villages, we had different places, like mostly the different stores, that we had scheduled stops, and people would go to them, or if they were right on the road, we'd always stop and pick them up wherever. Like if their home happened to be on the road, they knew to set their suitcase out, and we'd stop and pick them up. Same way, you know, like going off. But we had right many tourists that would drive or come in by bus to Manio and take our bus and come down. Fishermen, you know, we brought a lot of fishermen down at that time, and even campers that we've brought down that would camp different areas of the island. But most of our people were natives. All the people that went away to work in the first of the war, you know, I can think of many of them that really didn't have the money to go away to get a job, that we would haul up. When they come back, they'd have money, you know, and pay us for it. And they ride with us for years and years, you know, each time they came back home. A lot of people went to work on what they call the dredge boats from around this island. And they'd go as far up as Delaware, Philadelphia, for jobs. So there was a lot of people, working people that traveled with us. all the Coast Guard people when they went on Liberty. Most all of them traveled with us.
Michael Peel talks to Susan West about his favorite childhood meals. Do you ever eat stewed crabs? Or
I like stewed crabs, pie, red potatoes. When we grew up right here, there was 4 children, and some year my father might make $3,000 the whole year.
Okay.
You know, that's not, and 4 children. So that's where a lot of, I think, stews come in. You know, like you take 2 bluefish would feed 8 people no problem, because you put a lot of potatoes and dump gravy and stretch that.
Yeah.
But we didn't eat a lot of stewed crabs till we got older, because my mother didn't like to pick crab meat for us. She would. But a fish bone, a piece of fish with a bone in it is no more than eating a watermelon with a seed in it. You know, you just, something to me.
Right.
And some people, they get a bone, they quit eating fish.
Did you have, your family have gardens, vegetable
We had a big
gardens?
garden.
So pretty much growing up, you lived off the land and the
Pretty
sea.
well. Yeah. My best dish that we do not eat are 2 dishes. Turtle hash. Well, I love turtle hash. And fried and sturgeon hash.
Okay.
Fried or stewed sturgeon.
And both of those you can't eat now because it's illegal to catch
Very
those?
illegal. Oh, yes,
Okay.
it is. Can't even look at them.
Carrie Gray talks about the 1944 storm moving her house in Avon. Mrs. Gray was interviewed in 2003 by Barbara Garrity Blake for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Ethnohistory Project. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
We was in this house. We were sat in a big church, but it had a great big another, room, a L shape onto it. Sat down there in the marsh, where the weeds were growing.
Right.
And that 44 storm took it across the road and over the sand hills there and out there where they call the Dyken, where you come in. You see some trailers. As you come in Old Avon Village, they call that the Dyken. It took it and put it nearly about to the Dyken, that great big church. So that L shape had to be tore off of it. And the Red Cross drug it back. We was the last house back. And they said 98% of the houses was washed off of the blocks and away from their land.
That was the 44 storm?
That was the 44.
Where were you?
That was the big one.
Were you here?
Oh, yeah.
What'd you do?
Well, the first part of the storm, we was in this house. And then when the wind come around to the west, we knew we was going to get it then. So we all went up to Mr. Fields's. He lived more on the hills. And that house was packed with people leaving on the stairways.
Oh, my gosh.
And it washed 98% of the houses.
Ah. So then after that, a lot of people had to start over with their houses. And
Yeah, the Red Cross drug them all back.
did you say the Dyken? Is that like a dike?
Yeah, after I first come down here, a man from Keyhawk, they had dredged a dike up all around Avon and closed it in.
Ah. Just
And
to keep it from flooding all the time.
Yeah, the sea tide used to run in all the time, too.
Micah Daniels of Wanchese shares stories about her grandfather's expansion of Wanchese Fish Company and about her father and her uncles working at the fish house.
I began working full-time at the fish house in February of 2014. I grew up in Wanchese. I've headed shrimp. I've worked there on and off as I went to school, but we had a lot of transition at that time of employees. Well, my Uncle Sam, who's number 11, is the president of the company, and he's based in Suffolk.
Okay.
So he came down. So we would pack fish with my father and Uncle Sam, and I would be there, and then also like other contract labor. However, they are extremely competitive, and Sam's job was to make boxes. And even today, when he comes, he wants me to be on the other side to show me how fast he is. And he is really, really fast. The younger ones made boxes. The older ones sorted fish and shoveled ice. And I heard them, I was at the Seafood Festival gathering on Friday evening, and they were talking about how they were 125-pound boxes of ice because they were wood boxes that carried 100 pounds, and they put 25 pounds of ice. And so they had to stack them. So my dad and his brothers are wiry and strong and just really strong. However, they grew up, that was their job. Let me see, can I take this 125-pound box? I think you began to shovel ice when you were strong enough to shovel ice. You know, you made boxes, you shoveled ice, you stacked, and then the glorious job was working on the call table. Okay. However, you had to work yourself up to that. And so and they had fun. They played a lot. Because that was their play. You know, there's these hysterical stories of knocking each other out with fish and throwing this and doing this, because that's what they did. Their humor and they loved to play jokes and games. And whereas Dad was one of the top five versus the lower, you know, some of the younger ones. His first time he drove a truck, he was 16 years old to New York. He did not have a CDL. He did not have those things. His dad said, I need you to take these fish to New York because you'll get a better price. And he did. Their dad, he said it once and it was done. Right. However, to keep 11 boys in line, you would need that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, somebody's got to be in charge. And he had a really strict, rule and an iron fist. I mean, it was like, but he was also a visionary in the things that he saw. So his, I guess when you're 16, if you could drive, you took the fish to New York. They grew up with absolutely nothing. They did not have money. They, he would go to auctions or he would buy socks and things, buy a box. And you didn't get your own clothes. All the socks were the same. You just went there and got them out, and that's what you wore. Sometimes they say of my grandfather that when he woke up in the morning, he did not know what he would feed his children that evening, and that they came from just nothing. That sometimes people wouldn't pay their bills. And my dad said that his mother would take him and whoever, and they would go sit in the office of the people that owed them money all day long. So we'll all sit here until, and then as they became successful, he had the first dry dock in Wanchese. But he had that first dry dock because he got an old barge that came down on a train from Ohio, and then they sunk it, and then they pumped all the water out, and then they would move the boat in, then pump the water out, and they had a dry dock. And he was a real giving man too. Like, he would give you anything, if you needed it and he thought you needed it. He was just a giver. He bought a fish house in Hampton in the 70s. He sent it wasn't a fish house, it was a square of a dock that was a hole in a wall that he sent my Uncle Timmy up in the 70s because we couldn't access Oregon Inlet. And so, you know what?
Oh, even back then.
In the 70s. It's back to the 50s. I mean, it's been in the 30s, I think they gave federal permission that it should be a navigable channel. Okay. But instead of seeing hey, we're going to have a problem with my boats. Okay, Virginia's a huge port. I'm going to send a son there. We're going to start unloading there. Okay. And so we have a fish house in Hampton. When we can't get into North Carolina, it's a problem for us. But it's not as a problem for us as others, as we have another option. Right. And so he was a visionary in that I will send trucks to New York instead of the local fish market in Elizabeth City because I'm going to get a better price and I'll get my fish to the market first. And now we have a trucking company. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's evolved. I'm going to have a dry dock because I can work on my own boats and don't have to take them somewhere and then lift them up. I'm going to open another fish house because I can't get in, and they're not fixed, the government's not helping us with this. And so instead of waiting, I'm going to go start another place,
Okay.
So in terms of visionary, he was genius in that aspect.
Wayne Gray talks about indoor plumbing and electricity in Avon when he was growing up. Mr. Gray was interviewed in 2004 by Barbara Garrity Blake for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Ethnohistory Project. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
Do you still have a cistern at your home place?
No.
Do you remember those?
Oh yeah, I cleaned them in one. We had a pitcher pump out of the yard.
Oh, right.
And then
right.
we got modern. We got one in the house.
A pump in the house.
A pump in the house,
Yeah.
And that was really not nice. We didn't have to go out in the yard and pump
What
your
year
water.
were you born?
1940. We got electricity, I guess, in 50, 51, somewhere along
So
there.
you were about 10 or 11 years old when you got electricity.
And we had got the second bathroom in Avon. And boy, to have to see a commode that you could flush, it was amazing. Everybody was just carried away with that commode that you could flush.
Right. If you could probably bring your friends in and
And
charge
well,
you a
yeah,
nickel.
people wanted to see it. People wanted to see that thing,
Right.
because everybody had outhouses up until then. My grandfather guy had the first one,
Oh, yeah.
and then we had the second one. But life got better then.
Wow, so when you were a boy, things were still very primitive.
Well, we didn't have electricity. My mother used to wash clothes, and she would have to heat the water outside and wash on a washing board. That's how she washed. So it was rough.
Yeah.
And pump the water. Us kids pumped the water for her.
Now, when you cleaned the cistern, what did that entail?
Just going down in there and cleaning the black stuff out, sand,
Oh.
stuff that come off the roof. But that was the best water going.
How did you filter the water?
You didn't.
Elsie Hooper recalls activities and entertainment for young people in Salvo when she was growing up. Mrs. Hooper was interviewed in 2003 by Barbara Garrity Blake for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Ethnohistory Project. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
When I was growing up, went on the beach, and I never learned how to swim. I stayed in the water, either on that side or this side. Why I didn't drown. None of the girls. Jean did not learn to swim. Her sisters never learned how to swim. None of us that we growed up together learned how to swim around here. But we stayed in the water all the
You
time.
just wade and play.
The boys would be with us. They'd knock us down. We'd think we were going to drown.
What kind of things did y'all do for fun as girls?
When we were growing up? Well, we were like to go to each other's house, and then when we got up teenagers, we went to each other's house, and we would cook fudge, pool candy. Now I don't know where you know what pool candy is or
Is
not.
it saltwater taffy?
No, it would be something like it, only it's harder. It's made with sugar and vinegar,
Oh.
and you boil it. And then when you have to take lard, grease on your hands so it won't burn you, and pull it until it gets stiff, and then you break it off in little taffy pieces, whatever, hard candy. And I've got the recipe somewhere. I'll have to find that, and I'll send that to you too.
Yeah.
And but we did that, and the boys and girls was included with us, in the homes with us, and we'd go to each other's home and do that, and then we have we'd have tea and cookies, homemade cookies and things then, and such stuff as that, and we were let out. There weren't people around here that you were scared to allow your children out after dark in the yard to play, but we would get out and play and run around and do things like that. We were allowed to go on the beach when we got up a little age on us with the group. We were allowed to go on. We'd have what they call bonfires, and we'd have like hot dogs, marshmallows, and we'd take anybody's coat hangers we could take. I said if the parents knew we were taking their coat hangers, they would have hung us.
So it's more or less a pack of youngins. So
Yes,
with
they
just
got together.
different ages,
Oh, yeah.
and you just gang up
We all
and do
get
stuff.
yeah.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
then, as we got older and knew what clam bakes were, what we would do, someone would build us like a bonfire, and we would roast clams and such stuff as that. Oh,
Right.
yeah. And then after we got up sure enough, teenagers, that we could be allowed to, out, without feeling like that we were endangering, why we would have dances, parties, and things to the old schoolhouse, what is a community building in Rodanthe now, like Valentine parties. And what we would do, we'd all chip in them days and just throw a quarter in. If we had a quarter, if we didn't have a quarter, if we had a nickel, we'd throw the nickel in. If not, we didn't have no money, we'd share just like you did if you had $40. Everybody shared alike, and we'd buy light drinks. Mostly it was orange or grape, and we would all share. We would have we'd take our little cups and things from home that we could have, and we'd have dances and all kinds of stuff like that is what we would do, and out taking pictures of one another.
And was it kids from Waves and Salvo that were all together, and Rodanthe?
Mostly was Salvo until we got where we would walk from here to Waves and Rodanthe. The kids would.
Yeah.
And on Christmas time we went what they call serenading. We'd dress up. And I never would put nothing over my face because I couldn't breathe that good.
Serenading?
And, yeah, that's what they call it. And we'd go from house to house. We'd dress up in old clothes and high heel shoes. I got a brother-in-law over here, the youngest one, and Jean's brother, Earl. And they dress up in their mother's clothes. Oh, they put a bra on and packed herself and a hat on with a veil on it. And they'd paint their face sometimes. They'd paint their face black.
Right.
And they'd put high heel shoes and stockings on. Oh, you should see. And there are pictures floating around here in the neighborhood somewhere, so I know of the crowd. And then we got old enough that we could go from our neighborhood to Ways, and we were allowed to walk together. There was no highway, it was dirt roads.
Right.
And we'd walk and we'd go to people's homes up there that would want us to come in. And people would have pies and cakes for us and,
was
and
that for old
drinks and all.
Christmas?
No, this was...
Serenading was separate?
Yes, it was.
Just
Old
whatever you
Christmas
felt
was
like
to
it.
the schoolhouse, what they call schoolhouse in the neighborhood's got. The boys used to take what they call gum boots, you know what they are. They're hip boots.
Oh, right.
And which I never called them that, but they would call them that. And they'd take and cut the top part, the flap, you know how it come up and fasten to your belt?
Yeah.
They'd cut that off of a boot, and the boys would cut holes in it so their eyes and their mouth, cut their mouth, and cut nostril holes like that, and they put that on their face so no one could tell who they were. You see, we dressed so you wouldn't know who we were.
Right.
And I was a scaredy cat. I never would do nothing like that. The woman who preached out here too, Louise, her home was over in here. These houses over here belonged to her, and she built a store. Miss Lucy built a little old store, and they called it the Sweet Shop. And then they made homemade ice cream in the old big freezers then, and we'd go down there and get us a coma ice cream. Oh yeah, after she started storing and stuff will ship in here. Oh yeah, just sit there, and she had little booths built in the store, and she had a grocery store, and then what they call the Sweet Shop was built right on it, a room on it. We could go in there and eat ice cream and get us a drink, and we've done it many a time. Get us a lemon, and take a piece of peppermint, a stick peppermint candy. We said don't taste to me like it did then when I was a child, which I don't reckon anything does.
Yeah.
And we'd bore a hole in that lemon, and we'd take that stick of candy and put down in there, and we'd suck that candy in the lemon juice.
Oh my gosh.
Coastal Voices thanks the storytellers, the community oral historians, and Radio Hatteras for their support. And we thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.